I thank the gentleman. Now recognize the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Bishop, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That does it. I sit up here and I wonder what you must be thinking who are here kind enough to spend your time watching us today. And you must be troubled that only one of the major parties is here. You must be discouraged as you ponder what it would take for the federal government to fix this problem. I appreciate your hospitality and your interest, and I love everything I've seen about Yuma. How many fentanyl deaths in Yuma this year, Supervisor Lyons, in the past year?
Mr. Bishop, I was just able to submit data that I acquired from the hospital. That number continues to increase. You know, the average nationwide is 1 in 100,000, and yet we've had 16 fatalities directly attributable to fentanyl, so more than 16 times the national average.
How many ODs?
16. Well, there were 117 overdoses, and 16 of those were
16
fatals.
deaths, right? So you're way above the national average in that key thing. You know, you made a point earlier that this is very interesting because a lot of our colleagues in Washington say over and over and over again that the uncontrolled immigration between ports of entry really doesn't contribute to the illicit drugs because they come through the ports of entry. You've touched on that already, and you've said your data that Border Patrol's furnished to you is that about half, I hope everybody's listening in Washington, about half of the seizures are occurring between ports of entry.
Yes, sir.
Means it is coming from this uncontrolled problem. And yet, you know, we have colleagues that Katie Porter said at a hearing, she's a Democrat from California, she said last week at a hearing, we had a change in president in 2020 and some changes in border policy. And what we can see here is that the facts show we are seizing a lot more fentanyl, and for me, as a mom, that is a sign of success. I don't even know what to say about that. Border Chief Raul Ortiz said a couple of weeks ago, put a tweet out that said that Yuma, so far in fiscal year 23, we have seized over 476 pounds of fentanyl between ports of entry along our southwest border. That's enough to kill 100 million people. I'd say that's a problem even that Washington should be able to recognize. I want to use my remaining time, Supervisor Lyons, I hope you won't be offended. I was taken with a moment of conversation between you and me at the lunch before we came in here. I hope you won't mind my sharing it with the committee and with those attending, because for me it connects to the issue that we're grappling with. You and your wife have 11 children, and with 3 remaining at home, your wife has undertaken developing subdivisions.
Yes, she has.
You have 4 grandchildren. Your children are hardworking and productive. And yet you've made time not only to serve in office, but as a charitable leader, particularly as a chairman of the food bank, not only reckon with the awesome task of figuring out how to provide for 11 children, but you've produced and served in a way to demonstrate just how constructive and productive human lives can be. And as extraordinary as your story is, I would say that, and I don't articulate it to single you out, but to recognize that the law enforcement officers who are sitting next to and behind you, and the healthcare professionals like Dr. Trenchell, and the men and women attending this, there are hundreds of lives who likewise have fulfilled and even exceeded their potential to contribute to building and sustaining a culture that has proved the most successful in the history of mankind for the flourishing of human beings. And everyone wants his family, his or her family, and children to thrive. And I submit that what we're talking about is not really a question of the stresses on the safety net, the provision of food for the people who can't provide it for themselves, the provision of medical care, the jail, the detention services, keeping the community safe. This is about how we maintain and protect a culture that has been the most successful in the world. And that is what is at stake, too. So I'm grateful to you for having us here, for your hospitality in this great community, to show me that yet again, and to remind all of us that we must act. We must act. And the first thing we must do, I'm going to finish this way, because I think everybody's got a responsibility to say, what are we going to do? Matt Gaetz summarized it correctly, that it is a question of will. And the first thing to preserve this culture we must do is we must restore order. And the best vehicle at hand, Chip Roy of Texas is not here today, can't be here today, but his H.R. 29, which says to the Secretary of Homeland Security, notwithstanding any other provision of law, with respect to every migrant that you encounter, you must detain or turn away. You cannot just release them into the country. You cannot continue doing this to all of our support services, our safety net on which our culture depends. You cannot do this to our culture, or we will surely face not only what you just, a shocking information you just mentioned, Supervisor Lyons, about the assassinations. I haven't heard that story, I'm afraid to say. But there was this, on January 5 of this year, in I think it's Calacua, Mexico, there was a war between the Sinaloa cartel and the Mexican army, with helicopter gunships firing against people on the ground and burning cars, blocking the entrances to the town, so that the people were cowered in their homes. And that will occur in the United States of America if we do not get control of this problem. It sits squarely as a responsibility of the federal government, and we must have the will to act. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Well done. Well done. Thank you.